For more discourse on this issue, I'm now being joined on the news at 10 by Dr. Biodun Adedipe, an economist and a financial and management consultant. You're welcome to the news at 10.
My pleasure.
You heard from world leaders on the need for more opportunities for Africa, especially in the area of poverty alleviation. How can this be achieved?
I see this more of an issue of Africa's preparation and readiness. And that means in terms of programs and projects that we ourselves identify upfront, so that when the rest of the world comes in with the assistance they want to offer in eradicating poverty, we're actually ready for them and we can easily point to them where those resources should be channeled to. That really is the issue. It's not so much as the world coming to assist, but that we are ready in terms of specifics.
Now, what role do you think technology will play in the area of this development? That was really harped on at the Davos summit.
Yeah, I see technology from the perspective of innovation, most especially. Which means it is the application of technology that is the issue here, and not in terms of invention as we understand it generally. So in which case, we are not looking at inventing the wheel, but looking at what we can do with the wheel. So which means we learn from them what they had done with technology, and then we try to leverage on what technology can achieve. So that should be the direction. And I believe that we can do quite a whole lot. And we must also remember that technology can be a very good tool to bridge the gap between the rich and the poor.
Dr. Goodluck Jonathan, the president, he made no bones about the importance of the private sector in developing Nigeria's economy in particular. What's your view on this?
Well, I will say that that is the way to go. And for obvious reasons, over the various decades, we've been looking at economic development as a subject, a discipline, and also in terms of the practice of it. And that really goes from the perspective of, take the typical public enterprise vis-a-vis a private enterprise. What are the drivers? What are the motivations for whatever they do? You find that the private enterprise looks basically at delivering value and getting rewarded for the efforts involved. So in which case, the focus mainly and all the time is deliverables. And we don't get much of that in the public sector. So the whole idea now is that let the private sector be in the driver's seat, number one, and then where the government must still do some things, we now want to learn from the way the private sector entities actually run their businesses.
Who then protects the interests of the poor in the case of capitalism? Well, that's a capitalist society.
It's a major issue. In fact, that was also discovered at Davos. Right. And that's the fact that, yes, we've seen capitalism over the decades also doing very well in terms of creating wealth, but unfortunately also creating wealth in a manner that does not translate from growth to development. So that now brings a major responsibility on the part of the government in terms of regulation, in which case there must be business-friendly regulation where the private sector operators know what the rules are upfront. And because they know the rules, they also know that there are checks and balances. And that is where government comes in. So it is not a free-for-all. But they know quite well that, yes, there are certain interests to be protected, and those rules must be very transparent and also clear to every player in the market.
Okay, for global competitiveness, we understand that some analysts say that reforms are key for this to happen. Yeah. What sort of reforms can Nigeria engender to be a global player?
Yeah, now that is a very big issue. Big issue in the sense that reforms is not a once and for all thing. It is something you must do constantly, because it's a dynamic environment you are in. What you gain today is a loss to those who want the same thing. All right? So if you look at it as a zero-sum game, that will mean that for us to be competitive, we must constantly be reforming. And that means it is not just one direction, but we are looking at different aspects of the society. While we are looking at the broad issues in economics, right, we also must be looking at the same issue in our politics. Right. And of course, we must look at the social demographic issues as well. So when we talk of reform, therefore, it runs across the board. And you are looking at yourself in comparison with those who want to attract the same resources from the rest of the world. Because in reality, what Nigeria wants is not exclusive to us. There are other African countries, by the way, that want the same resources. So to be competitive, we must constantly reform different aspects of our lives.
Now, Finally, how do you expect these gains to be played out in Nigeria from the Davos experience, especially also since we're holding the World Economic Forum, the African chapter, if I may, in May?
Okay, that's a very good one. Because one major thing is that if you go to such a high-profile event, what I expect are two important things. One is that while you were there, you had a very clear focus as to what you wanted to take away from it. And that comes in terms of deals. I put them in terms of MOUs. So in which case, how many MOUs were we able to come up with from Davos? That's number one. Then the second plank to it is ideas. Because when you come together on such a platform, you see people from the rest of the world coming up with several ideas and solutions to problems. What were we able to learn from other countries? Maybe they have been in the same situation with us in the past, or perhaps even now because of the interest they are showing in Nigeria and Africa. They are now discussing our problem. So we should also be able to come up with ideas. And then we follow that now with what I call religious execution. Because that really is the ultimate. Now we can get all the ideas, we can sign all the MOUs in the world, but if we don't commit, religiously to execution, those things will not get us anywhere.
And that's why we'll leave it. Thank you so much, Doctor. I'm speaking with Dr. Obiadun Adedipe, an economist and a financial and management consultant.